I bet you can, but you're tired. And why not? Have some help, he asked, watching Sally nod a few times. Once, once getting her shirt unbuttoned, he slipped off her shoulder and gave her tummy a nice poke, and making her giggle. He grinned and took a hold of the rim of her shorts and pulled them down. And finally, a man grabbed a hold of her nightgown and pushed open over her head, and make sure her go, her arms could go through the sleeves. All done, he said happily, watching the girl smile back and giggling when she bounded to the top of their bed. And Johnny rose up and picked up her clothes. The door was opened up, and Wanton Sally's mother's tucked her in bed. You ready for bed? She asked, walking around the bed. Johnny looked up and hurried over the other side of the bed. I'll take her. Okay, is that okay? Mary looked up at him and smiled and shaking her head. Of course. She looked down at her daughter and leaned in and kissing the child on her forehead. Good night, sweetheart. Good night, Mama. I'm giving the girl a gentle rub with her thumb and the forehead. Was Mama took her the clothes Johnny had and made her way out of the room. Johnny smiled to her mother and walked over to the light switch, flicked it off, and he carefully closed the door to her room and locked it. Slowly, he looked over his shoulders towards Sally. Johnny wore a chilling, crooked smile. After the next few days, Murray noticed that Sally wasn't acting like herself. She wasn't smiling brightly and she normally did. Sally wasn't chipper or spoke with the same amounts of happiness. Murray took her to the child's hand before she left to play with her friends and took her aside. Sally looked up at her mother with a confused look. Honey, are you feeling okay? She asked, kneeling her it could be at the child's height. Sally stared at her idly, and began to weep. Mother wiped her eyes confused. Sally, Mama, I didn't want to. The girl managed to say her hiccups, sobs. Why didn't you want to do what, sweetie? I didn't want to play. I didn't want to play his games. The child looked at her mother and held her twice tightly. He touched me and he made me touch him. Marie frowned and gently stroking the child's hair comforted her. She lightly began shushing the girls and calm her down. Shh, it's okay. Mama's here now. It was a nightmare and that's all. The girl had a scary nightmare. And everything is fine now, okay? Don't worry about it anymore. She watched Sally look up at her breathing chopped in from her crying and smiled. Okay, Mama. Her mother smiled and kissed her on the forehead. Now go wash up and don't want to play with her friends with a dirty face. Sally a small giggle and run off to the bathroom to wash her face. Later that day, Johnny and his brother came back from work. Frank sighed, smiling when Sally waved at him. Father waved back and closed the car door, making his way up to the house. Johnny looked up at Sally as well and smiled, waving at to her. The child's smile slowly wilted, showing this happiness in it, but she waved back as well. Johnny also walked inside the house and paused when he heard the conversation between his brother and his wife. Sally, what? Frank asked. She had a nightmare, a very bad one. She said, he touched me. Who the hell is he? I don't know, Frank. It was only a nightmare. I just wanted to inform her of what's going on with her, and she was acting different. John frowned his brows in anger, and his knuckles turning white, and then claimed to calm down quickly and thinking fast. He put a smile on and walked into the room, making a loud looked like he was just walking through their conversation with his rising eyebrows. Whoops, did I interrupt something? He asked, watching the couple shake their heads. Johnny smiled again and thumbed back in the direction of the car. I'm going to head to the store. You need anything, Marie? The woman smiled and looked towards the kitchen. Yes, actually, you can get me some eggs, milk, bread, and juice. No. Johnny nodded to leave until he paused. Sally wanted me to come along as well. Just inform you, Marie said. Thank you, John, he said again, made his way out of the house and keyboards looking to Sally and her friends cupped his shape his mouth. Sally, the child looked up, staring at him. Come on, let's go to the store. John, he was white, to open the car and gestured for the girl to follow him. Sally sat there for a moment and then placed her dolls in the grass. I'll be back in a minute. Watch over Hobson's and Lily for me. Jenny and Sarah smiled, and they continued to play their game of the dolls without her. Sally carefully made her way to the car, around the car, climbing into the passenger seat, and buckled herself. Did Mama want you to go to the store? She asked. Johnny nodded and put the keys in ignition and turned on and backed out of the driveway. Yep, she wants me to get a food for her. Maybe I can get you something too, she asked. Looking out at the child, Sally nervously smiled back and ahead, watching her sensory pass by. As soon as they got the road led on to the store, Sally noticed he wasn't slowing down to turn to the parking lot. She frowned her eyebrows and confused and looked up at him. Uncle Johnny, the store's back that way, she said, pointing in the direction of the Whole Food store, but nothing came from the man. He just continued driving with a faint smile on his face. The child sat up and passed the back seat, watching the store go slowly, grow smaller and smaller, until inside, realizing they weren't going to the grocery store. The child watched her uncle drive until into the small parking lot and the community park near the town. No one went to the park on Sundays, so I felt nervous and her breathing quickeness. She watching the man, wanting eyes. Johnny put the car in the park and turned on the ignition off, looking at the child. You told your mom what happened, didn't you? He asked, watching the girl friendly shaking her head. Said, no. You're not playing the game, right, Sally? His tone almost slightly singing quality to it. The man reached over and pulled the girl to him, ignoring the struggling she was making, her whimpering pleas. You said you'd play the game with me, Sally. You lied to me. He opened the car beside him and climbed out and found the child and shoved her to the ground, quickly pinning her head down. And he, ignoring the cries and withering, he was making. You have been punished for now breaking the rules, he asked in slight sing-song tone and began to unbuckle his belt. Just yes, it's just in the couple of buddies, an 8 years old Sally Williams, in a community park. This week, the week-long search closed more tonight at 9 o'clock. She's sworn she closed her door and climbed into the bed. I guess I forgot, she thought. Getting up and warmed up her bed, the teen made her way across into the room and shut the door. Before asked, could climb her cupboards. A low creak outside the hall rose. Were her parents up? They must have checked on her and see she was asleep or something. As soon as her legs got covered up, the girl rose, hearing Frank's sound and crying. It sounded like a child, who slowly rose up from the bed once more. The girl made her way to the door and opened it. The crying seemed louder outside her door, peering into the darkness. The teen crept to the hallway, following the sounds of whimpering. Once she got into the hallway, the girl gasped, sitting on the floor and of the moonlit. It was a little girl. She was hunched over, crying. How did she get into their house? Through the window, swallowing hard, the teen spoke up. Who are you? How'd you get in my house? Suddenly the crying stopped. The child moved her trembling hands away from her face, but behind hers, twitching lightly.